After another Illini victory on Monday night, Brad Underwood talked about Mihailo Petrovic, saying he doesn't know what role he has on this team. Brad, let me make it easy for you.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Locked On Illini. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen each and every day, and for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports network you'll find around. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Sonny Verba, your host here at Locked On, where I continue to provide you coverage each and every day. Everything you see and hear is absolutely free. Only thing I ask for in return is, if you don't mind, hit that like button while you're watching. I promise it's a great video. And make sure you're subscribed, because if you're an Illini fan, if you're watching this, I do this every single day. Most of the time, that includes the weekends as well. You can always count on 25 to 35 minutes of Illini content, wrapping up whatever's going on in Champaign. As for what I'm going to discuss today, I'm going to talk about, maybe arguably one of my favorite players on this basketball team, a guy who I've been kind of vouching for all offseason long, ever since he committed. Mihailo Petrovic. Mihailo had it's funny, right? A week ago, depending on when you're watching this, a week ago, Wednesday night, Illinois was playing Alabama at the United Center. And the plans were for Mihailo to not even play in that game. Brad Underwood said this himself. It was simply Kylan Boswell getting into foul trouble, which kind of forced Brad's hand and made Mihailo come in and play. And, he played very solidly in the limited minutes that he got. And so following that, he had games on Saturday and Monday. Petrovic played, and you saw some good and you saw some bad on Saturday. And then Monday comes along, and I think Petrovic, I'm hesitant to call it a breakout game, because it's not like the competition is at an elite level quite yet. But when you get 12 points and 4 assists in 16 minutes, that in every stretch it's impressive. And so a guy who, he signed on here when Andrei Stojakovic was visiting. So he was kind of an unheralded player. Nobody knew who he was. When I started Googling him, literally, after that he had committed to the Illini, there was a lot of talk about him going to Wisconsin. And so I asked my Wisconsin peeps about him. They're like, yeah, we've heard his name, but they don't know much about him either. So I sat there and like, all right, well, I got to do my work then. The Locked On community expects me to do it. So I watched some YouTube clips, and then I watched a couple of games of him streaming, because he'd be playing out in Europe. And quite honestly, I was impressed. I liked what I saw. And so after his performance on Monday evening, at a time where Keaton Wagler has played so well, you have Kylan Boswell. There were whispers, is Petrovic even in the rotation? Is Mihailo, is he one of those guys who's just not going to get healthy? He just, even if he is healthy, he's not going to fit into this basketball team anymore, the way that they play. And then I think we got a glimpse of what he can provide on Monday evening. And again, Brad Underwood, when he was asked after the game what kind of role Mihailo could have on this team, he said, I don't know. And for a lot of reasons, I understand. Early Tuesday, Mihailo Petrovic was one of the players available to media. And you can tell the communication. Props to him coming to a new country. But let's just say you can tell the English isn't always all the way there yet. He did a great job. He put up a great effort. But you can see why even Brad Underwood said that there was defensive miscues on Monday evening. And that's going to happen with Mihailo on the floor every now and then. But I think it's clear now that Mihailo's got not just a role on this basketball team, but I think an important role. I don't think, and this is coming as a Mihailo supporter, I don't think you change anything with the lineup anytime soon. I think you continue to roll out Kylan Boswell, Keaton Wagler, Andrei Stojakovic, David Mirkovic, and Tomislav Ivisic for the foreseeable future. You just count on that as being your lineup. But I think Keaton Wagler's second in the team in minutes played per game. That doesn't need to happen. Keaton, as great as he's been, and he's been great I'm going to talk about him in the player grades in the next segment, by the way. He's going to hit a freshman wall. And when he hits that freshman wall, you have a guy who's ready-made to step right in. And that's a luxury for Brad. Even if he hasn't hit that freshman wall. Right now, Mihailo Petrovic is going to give you something that other players on this team just simply can't do. He gives opposing head coaches another headache to worry about just because Illinois itself is so incredibly hard to defend. There's a reason we're one of the most offensively efficient teams in the country. But when you add Mihailo to the mix, a guy who I genuinely believe if he played starters minutes, if he played anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes a game, he'd be about 13-7, 13-8 when it comes to assists. There was a lot. He only ended up with 4 assists on Monday, but I mean, in the Talk Illini Discord, we're all laughing about it. There's maybe 4 or 5 assists that he missed out on just because his teammates missed wide open shots. That's just what he does. He's the best table setter on this team. He's the best pure point guard on this team. Again, being clear, not saying he's better than Colin Boswell, not saying he's better than Keaton Walgreave, but clearly a guy with his experience, a guy who's not afraid of the big moment. I talked about watching some of his games, streaming it, the games that were happening in Europe. At least twice. He was trusted to make the game-winning shot, and he did for his basketball team out there. So he's not afraid of the moment. And we've seen it in 2 of the games that he checked into the Alabama game and basically made a step-back 3 right away in front of a sold-out, raucous United Center crowd. He did the same thing on Monday. Basically checks right in, and he just makes a 3-point basket. He's not intimidated by any sort of arena. In fact, maybe I'm jinxing myself, but I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what he does at Madison Square Garden. There's going to be a lot of players who can get intimidated by that sort of environment. And that, if I'm being honest with you, that's one thing I'm kind of afraid of. I don't feel good about this game on Black Friday against the Huskies. I just have so much respect for their head coach and that program. I think they're monsters. And I think our team, there's a chance that, hopefully we don't have a Duke performance, but how those guys are going to handle Madison Square Garden is going to be very interesting for me to watch and observe. But the one guy I'm not remotely worried about is Mihailo. Let Mihailo be your first guy off the bench. If your team, like last year, is struggling to hit those 3-point shots, if the shots are simply not falling, what you didn't have last year was a guy who could make life easy for his teammates. Kasparis was a very good passer, not at the level Mihailo Petrovic is. If you guys recall, my everydayers certainly will know, one of my hot takes this season was, with the presumption that Mihailo was going to be starting, that Mihailo Petrovic would lead this league in assists. If you remember me saying that, let me know in the comment section. Obviously, Braden Smith is off to a tear, and Jeremy Fears is probably going to very easily win the assist title. But this Petrovic angle that I had, so far, I don't look crazy for even suggesting that. Again, it's not going to happen because he doesn't start. But if you look at the minutes compared to the assists that he's getting per game, I would argue, it has to be true. Petrovic has to be getting more assists per minute than the other guys I mentioned. When your shots aren't falling, usually that meant this Illinois basketball team loses. But on Monday, the shots weren't falling. They shot less than 30% from 3-point land. But what changed? 2 guys, Andrei Stojakovic, who I'll talk about a little bit later, and Mihailo Petrovic. Mihailo is a guy who can attack the rim and then dish it off to Big Z for an easy, wide-open dunk. What does that do? That gets everyone's confidence up. If you're at home, that gets the crowd riled up. The crowd wants to see that. Mihailo attacked the rim. He got fouled, and he'd make an and one. He'd go up with his left hand, and shots went in. I understand the analytics with Illinois want them to shoot as many 3-point shots and as many layups as possible. But sometimes those 3-point shots don't fall. Last year, if those 3-point shots didn't fall, that means Illinois lost. That doesn't have to be the case this year. Now, I'm curious, and this is something which I'm debating in my head. How many minutes should Mihailo Petrovic play? I can understand a role, as little as 10 minutes, but I can foresee him going 22, 23 minutes. It's one of those where Keaton has played so well. I don't want to detract from anything he's doing, but right around this time, maybe even a little later, right around December last year, when Kasparas Jakushonis was on his tear, I was talking about, he was being discussed for being a potential All-American at that point. I warned everyone right here on this show saying, hey, that freshman wall is going to come at some point. And a lot of fans were saying, no, this kid's different. He played in Europe. He's not like a typical 17, 18-year-old that comes from high school. But that's exactly what happened. Kasparas, I think it's fair to say, in the second half of the season, wasn't the same player as he was in the first half. And if that were to happen this year with Keaton, if Keaton, isn't the star player that he's shown that he could be in the first 7 games so far this year, if he's just an average, which again is okay. This is a guy, composite 150 ranked recruit in the country when we signed him. Well, we have another option that we can pivot to. I've argued in the Talk Illini Discord, and I can talk about this a little bit later here. Like, there's an argument that having Mihailo and Kylan Boswell as your backcourt, in a lot of ways that could work. Now, how can that work? Well, it gives Brad Underwood more flexibility. We saw on Monday that the Vaqueros just came out and they scored immediately just off of switching. They were forcing Illinois to make switches that, Brad Underwood loves size and length in his basketball teams. We know that. But forcing guys like Z to come out and switch to smaller guys, we saw Alabama do a lot of that. And we saw the Vaqueros basically watch that tape and decide to duplicate it. Illinois was supposed to be ready for it. They said it themselves. They scouted for it. It just didn't work out. Well, what did Brad Underwood ultimately end up doing? He switched to a smaller lineup. And that's what Mihailo Petrovic allows you to do. You can have a bigger lineup for most of the teams in the country, but because they simply can't handle it. But we keep talking about how deep this roster is for Brad Underwood and this Illini team. And with that comes these sort of luxuries where you can play with things a little bit. You can have a lineup where maybe Merck is your center. And maybe you can still have Stojakovic as your 4. Keaton Wagler as your 3. Boswell and Mihailo as your backcourt. That's still a lot of offensive firepower. And it gives you, again, flexibility to adjust. And then if you want to go big, you can go big. You can have Keaton as your point guard. Brad Underwood may not know what he wants to do with Mihailo or what kind of role Mihailo has on this team moving forward. But tell me if I'm wrong. I think his performance on Monday evening proved that, well, he's going to have a role. And in my opinion, it should be a pretty prominent one. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who'll score next to any fourth quarter comeback. Plus, you can even combine your live plays into a same-game parlay for a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, no matter if your team's winning or they're losing. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And welcome back. Okay, next up, I'm going to do the player grades from the game Monday evening. I didn't get a chance to do this for football, that Wisconsin game. I do this for every game. Otherwise, you're not going to get a football one. I refuse to watch that Wisconsin game again. It was just too difficult, but that doesn't mean I'm going to skimp out on the basketball side. I'll have one out for this game, and I'll also have one out for the Black Friday UConn Husky game. Again, 87-73 victory over UTRGV. I'm really impressed with their head coach. I'm really impressed by their basketball team. I know a lot of fans wish that we won by a higher amount, and I totally get that. But sometimes it's okay to be challenged a little bit. That I hate to say this, but that game against Long Island to me was a complete waste of time. You won by 40. You slept walk to a 40-point victory. You could have won by 60. You could have won by 65. There's very little I learned from that game. This game, however, I do think I learned a little bit from. There's only 2 A's, surprisingly, for me for this game. I think the best player in the game with a solid A for me was Andrei Stojakovic. The guy just, once again, he attacks the rim and he makes his bucket. Andrei was 11 for 12 from 2-point land on Monday evening, shooting 68.2% from 2 this season. Not that there aren't concerns. Again, he was only 1 for 5 from 3-point land, and now he's only shooting 26.3% from 3. Again, he wasn't a 3-point shooter coming into this year, despite what his last name might suggest. But you need him to get his averages a little bit higher because he needs to keep the defense honest. If we're going to play 5 out, Andres needs to find a way to make himself a target out there at the 3-point line, because otherwise his defender is just going to start sagging off. And if a guy like Mihailo Petrovic is trying to drive to the lane, then Andres' guy is going to just come attack. Okay, but still, overall, he continues to be probably our best player coming into the season. I mean, he's scored 4 straight 20-plus point games now. And, when he first signed with us, I said, I think we found the guy who's going to be the leading scorer on this basketball team. Then Brad Underwood started hinting in the offseason that, no, I want Andres to focus on defense mainly. And so the narrative became, okay, maybe he's going to be like a 13, 14-point guy. But no, it looks like Andres, just the guy's in that future NBA guard or forward. He's got the prototypical size. Of course, he's going to have to learn to make that 3-pointer at some point. But he's going to be a guy who probably will end up leading the team in scoring. And he's just so incredibly efficient as long as he's inside that 3-point line. And hopefully he can continue the stretch, because I think he might be the most important player that we have on Friday against that Huskies team, because he's the one that I think is going to have to go one-on-one with a guy like Karaban and keep this team in it. So Andrei Stojakovic for me was a 1 solid A. A minus comes to Mihailo Petrovic, who I just talked about in that first segment. Again, 12 points, 4 assists, but those 4 assists could have just as easily been 7 or 8. And again, in very limited minutes. Mihailo, again, I don't know what to say. Like, he's only played in a few minutes each and every game. But to me, he's produced in each and every game. And I know there's a lot of people talking about his defense. And I want to be respectful of it, because I'm trying to assume that my blinders are off. But I rewatched the game. And, let's be honest, Monday, I was never really concerned about the result of the game. At no point was I worried. So I know people always tend to point to Petrovic's defense. And yeah, he missed an assignment or two, but Brad addressed that at the end when I believe he mentioned they had switched to a zone or switched to a man. One of those, basically, Mihailo didn't understand. And so he was still playing the previous set defense. And so there was miscommunication there. So that's why I can't give him a solid A. But again, the scoring punch that you needed, and not just a scoring punch. When a day where your outside shot was not going in, Mihailo set the table for his teammates to give them easier shots, which, again, is just going to make their lives easier. I mean, he's a big reason that on a day where the team didn't shoot all that well, they still finished with 87 points. And keep in mind, this Illinois team has now gone 7 games scoring 80-plus points, which hasn't been done since the Flying Illini season. And a big part of that on Monday was Mihailo Petrovic, who I gave an A- for his performance. As for my third highest graded players, the players now we're talking at the B level, I don't know Zvonimir Visic's game all that well yet, but I'm starting to notice a trend that you're going to get a really good Z game or you're going to get a bad Z game. Monday evening was a really good one. In just 18 minutes off the bench, Big Z had 10 points, 7 rebounds, and a blocked shot. I talked about this in the post-game report with Tomislav clearly struggling. There are at times, I think right now, that you're just better off having Zvonimir in the game, just for the defensive presence that he gives you. And then the fact that he's not afraid to take 3-point shots, which I feel like right now his brother is. He's a little more timid, a little more hesitant to take even the wide open shots. I think, maybe for the foreseeable future, while Tommy recuperates and slowly gets to, I don't even think he's at 80% right now, but once he gets to 80, 90, 100%, then maybe you swap it back and forth. But right now, I think I would be okay with the 50-50 split. when it comes to minutes between Tomislav and Zvonimir. I really liked what I saw from Zvonimir on Monday, and he was the third highest graded player I had with a solid B+. And another B comes from a guy who, Illinois fans' favorite target, and that's Ben Humrickhouse. Now, I liked what I saw when I watched on Monday evening, but even on the rewatch of the game, nothing has changed. When people talk Ben Humrickhouse, all I see on social media is, oh, there goes Ben 0 for 2 again. And I can't say this enough. You're missing the point of Ben Humrickhouse this year if that's the only thing that you're going to be focused on. I understand his main role on this team ultimately is going to be to hit those open shots. He was 0 for 2, but Keaton Wagler was 1 for 6. Colin Boswell was 1 for 5, I believe. Stojakovic, as I mentioned before, was 1 for 5 from three-point land. The entire Illini roster was not hitting shots on Monday. But I don't think there was any guy who played better defense or, put forth better effort on defense and just crashing the glass. That's what Ben Humrickhouse right now, you can tell he's very comfortable in that role. I almost wonder if we saw this version of Ben Humrickhouse last year, a lot of us wouldn't have the animosity that I feel like Ben kind of gets right now. Right now, fans only want his three-point shot to be falling. And I'm telling you, he's twice the player that he was last year. Because last year, if his shot wasn't falling, you can see his confidence falling. You can see other aspects of his game just not there. Now, the rebounding is going to be there and the defensive effort's going to be there. And you know what? That's all I asked for Ben Humrickhouse this year. I want to be maybe the seventh guy on this basketball team. So I gave Ben a solid B for his efforts on Monday evening. I have one more B, and that's a B- for Tomislav Ivičić, who I discussed earlier. Again, he's not passing the eye test for me, but overall he did have 10 points and 5 rebounds. He's getting better. He was a spectator Wednesday against Alabama. He got a little bit better against Long Island, and he got marginally better Monday evening. But clearly, he's not Tommy yet. He's not the potential all Big Ten center that most of us hope that he can be right now. And I try to keep this into perspective that, when we first heard about his injury, the timelines we heard was 3 to 6 weeks. So in an alternate universe, he's not even playing right now. So just the fact that he's on the court is great, but that doesn't mean he's healthy. And he's, just one of those guys where it's going to be really hard to beat UConn without a healthy Tomislav Ivičić, but, that's just how things played out. It is what it is. Tommy, I gave a B-, and believe it or not, that's it. Those are the only A's and B's I gave out. Next up, we're going to talk about Kylan Boswell. Kylan, not that he was even the highest grade. He was actually a C- for me. Kylan is simply one of those guys who, if his shot isn't falling, I feel like he minimizes effort elsewhere a little bit. Now, I came up with a narrative, and notice the words I chose. I came up with it. I have no idea if it's true or not. I feel like against the smaller teams and the lower level teams, let me rephrase that, Kylan kind of, on the offensive side, takes it easy. He's going to let his players get involved, maybe, try to get their confidence up. And maybe I'm just spinning that in my head. Maybe I'm just trying to be the eternal optimist when it comes to that. But I have noticed that every single time that, a big matchup comes, well, so does Kylan Boswell. And more often than not, Kylan Boswell is one of the best players in those type of games. So again, I'm really looking forward to seeing the effort that Kylan's going to have on Friday. But I'll be honest, what I saw on tape on Monday was his worst game. I liked some of the tenacity at times on defense, but I mean, he shot 4 of his 5 shots from 3, and he missed all of them. He's just one of those guys where he's not naturally a three-point shooter. I understand he shot better when he was at Arizona, but if the three-point shot isn't falling, then just attack the rim. You are bigger than the guard that's guarding you almost every single time. Take advantage of that. I think Kylan played his best ball last year at the end of the year when that's what he was doing, when he's attacking the rim. So that's what I wish I can see a little bit more of from Kylan when the shots aren't falling. I jumped to C-, but actually the next highest graded guy was Keaton Wagler, who did not have a good shooting night. Not at all. He was 2 for 11 on Monday evening, but even then, he still ended up having 8 points and I believe 8 rebounds. Keaton, I have to be careful how I keep talking about him. Keaton's one of those players that normally when you have a 150th ranked freshman come in on your team and you say that, that guy with that template had a bad game, you figure that he had 0 points, 0-5 from the field, maybe 1 or 2 rebounds. He contributed nothing. But with Keaton, even on his bad games, he's contributing somewhere. If I recall correctly, he was the second highest on the team when it comes to plus minus. When he's on the basketball court, good things are happening. I do wish that maybe he's falling in love with his shot a little bit too much. My favorite skill of his early in the year was the fact that he was always getting to the free throw line. And he did. I think he went to the free throw line for 5 free throws shots on Monday, going 3 for 5. But if he can get that at 6, 7, 8 every single game, you're talking about 5 extra points. Keaton's just one of those guys who clearly under recruited. We should be so eternally grateful for him. And this was just not a good game. But again, as a freshman, you can't expect all of them to be great ones. David Mirkovic, I think, was a little bit more disappointing. Brad Underwood called him out, saying his effort in practice last week was not very good, and it kind of conveyed over to the game on Monday evening. And he also said that right before the 2020 game that David had the best practice of his life, that nobody could stop him offensively. And that led to 20-20. And so maybe this is a maturity thing. Again, we have to keep in mind that, just because these guys have had such stellar performances early in the season, they're still freshmen. And you just hope that David is locked in on practice this week, because we may need another magical 20-15 type of game to go up against UConn, especially at Madison Square Garden. And finally, Jake Davis and Brandon Lee also got C minuses for me. Jake Davis, I like him. I like him as a basketball player, but I just don't know what his role is on this team anymore. Every time he goes onto the basketball court, he just doesn't fill anything out on the box scores. He always has a bunch of zeros. I think he had 3 points in 5 minutes, but that was it. He does the right thing on the basketball court, but at the same time, he's just not producing. And so I wonder now that, especially with Mihailo in tow, with this roster being as deep as it is, Jake just might be one of those guys who you're going to see more often than not maybe start getting DNPs once the Big Ten season starts rolling around and you're starting to play some of these prominent teams in your non-conference schedule. Same thing with Brandon Lee. This one's less of a surprise because I think Brandon, for the most part, it was always considered that he'd be sitting on the bench this year, learning from guys like Kylan and maybe, a guy like Andrei Stojakovic. He did okay, 4 points in 5 minutes, but surprisingly with Brandon Lee, for me at least, his offense seems to be further ahead than his defense, which is just not what we heard before. We heard that Brandon Lee was very a stout defender, a mini Kylan Boswell, a future Kylan Boswell. That's just not what I've seen so far this year. But I think we're seeing the most minutes that Brandon's going to play early on this year. I think once Brad does settle on his rotation, that we're going to see very minimal Brandon Lee, unless it's a blowout situation or emergency situation. But let's not think about that. Let me know your grades also in the comment section. What do you agree with? What do you not agree with? Am I crazy off on something? I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually, getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view of the seat before I buy it. Honestly, it's faster, it's cheaper, and it's less stressful than any other ways I've used to buy tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Gametime immediately. And welcome back. I just want to apologize again if my voice seems off. Of course, right in time for holiday season, and with my kids at home, it seems like I've caught a bug. So I've been trying to take a couple medications. I've been trying to record later in the day, thinking I would feel better. It's just not happening. So I apologize if my voice sounds a little bit more nasally than usual. But still, I'm trying to turn out as many of these episodes as possible. Why? Because you guys do such a great job supporting this program. Again, I'll say that if you don't mind, hit that like button on this video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Send it to an old Illini roommate of yours or someone else who also follows this program. By you hitting the like button, what this does, it sends this show to other Illini fans. And join us in the Talk Illini Discord, where we're talking about potential defections on the football side. Some names that hopefully no one will be happy to see. But regardless, thank you guys for your patience. I promise I'm going to be hydrating as often as I can to try to get better for you guys, because you guys absolutely deserve it. But until next time, ILL. Love you guys.